Let's have a chat about intermittent fasting on a GLP-1. Should you do it? Is it safe? And if you choose to start fasting, exactly how do you fast in a healthy way? How long should you fast for? What do you eat? Well, in this video, I am going to cover all of that and more about how to fast, why you should fast, and what I focus on eating when I do fast. If you're new here, my name's Gina. I am a qualified nutritionist and I help people to lose weight in a healthy way. If you've tried fasting and you feel shaky, headachy, or weak, what's happening is your brain is having an energy crisis of sorts because your brain is getting a signal that your blood sugar is too low. And these feelings just mean that your body isn't adapted yet, so don't panic. So you can start with short fasting periods if you're interested in fasting. If you're not adapted, or you might be pre-diabetic before you start, which is actually what those symptoms really are telling you, it's telling you that your hormones are not controlling your blood sugars the way that they should be. So if you're following a diet of real, whole, unprocessed foods, and you're extending your fast window a little bit at a time, your body will start to adapt, and it will adapt fairly quickly. That's the good news. And over time, your body gets used to burning more fat for energy, and it starts making ketones, right? So you would have heard of ketones. Well, ketones are amazing for sparing our muscle tissue. They signal our body to protect lean mass, and especially during fasting periods. This is why people who are fat adapted can fast for much longer without any muscle loss or without getting those feelings of weakness and shakiness. And that's just because your brain actually does and can live on ketones for energy. So you don't get that same signal that you've got low blood sugar because there is an alternative fuel, right? So the real foundation here isn't just about hitting a protein target, which we do need to focus on protein, and it is absolutely very, very important, but it's actually more about getting your body adapted to fasting so that you can dip into fat stores and use that fat on your thighs to get through the day. So lower carb whole food eating does that for you. Keto does that even more effectively. And your GLP-1 medication is actually helping you to get there a little bit easier than you could have gotten there before, because less appetite and less food noise means you are more in control over the choices that you make, right, when it comes to your food. So if you've just started a GLP-1 and you're interested in trying fasting, this would be a great time to do it, but we have to do it in a healthy way. So stay tuned. So is fasting safe for most people? And here's some questions. What about breakfast? And is it the most important meal of the day? What about all those people over the last God knows how many years that have told us that we should be eating 6 times a day to stimulate our metabolism? What about all of that? So here's the thing. Our bodies were literally designed to go long periods of time without food. Our metabolism evolved around a feast and famine cycle from our hunter and gatherer ancestors, right? Fasting is actually our natural state. I think constant eating and eating highly processed foods is the real experiment here. It's not really fasting. We've just all been told for so long that we have to keep eating because, well, I mean, if we don't keep eating, all the big food companies won't make any money, right? And look where all this eating has got us over the last few years. Injections to stop us from eating, and half the world is dying of chronic diseases. So when we think about fasting, we really need to reframe the way we think about it and think about it as a normal process of living. So when you go without food after being adapted to fasting for longer periods, and I'm not talking any more than like 16 to 18 hours, right? We're just talking short fasting periods, nothing crazy like 24 hours or 4 days or whatever, nothing like that. Our body actually activates hormones like glucagon, which increases, and that signals your liver to release stored glucose and start converting fat into fuel, exactly what we want. Growth hormone surges a little bit, and this is a big one because growth hormone is profoundly muscle sparing and fat mobilizing. Exactly what we want, that combination. It's one of the reasons why fasting actually protects your muscle when you are fat adapted. And then we have adrenaline and noradrenaline, which if you're in the US, you would know that as epinephrine. So that rises, which is why a lot of people feel surprisingly sharp and energetic during a fasting period rather than foggy and flat and tired. So all these hormones, glucagon, growth hormone, and adrenaline, all raises your blood glucose levels, right? And that might sound counterintuitive, but remember, your body needs blood glucose at all times. It just doesn't need lots of it. But they are survival hormones, and they exist to keep your brain fueled and your body functional when food isn't available. And when we add a GLP-1 to this situation, it makes it much easier for the body to adapt into this normal state of being. So we can't talk about fasting without talking about autophagy, because everyone's heard of autophagy. Most people online talk about it as if you need to like white knuckle your way through an 18 or a 20-hour fast to get the benefits of autophagy. But actually, I'm going to give you some information that will make you very happy. I am more interested in what happens when fasting is just a part of normal daily life, like it was for our ancestors all those years ago, right? Because it has been a normal part of daily life for me. Since I can remember, actually, even as a kid, I never ate breakfast. I never ate until much later in the day. I did some research before filming this video so that I could share with you the changes that happen inside our body when we fast on a regular basis. So a 2023 study tracked people who fasted for 17 to 19 hours a day as a normal habitual way of living. They tracked them for 30 days. And what they found was autophagy gene expression, so it's happening at a gene level, built up over that time. It was still elevated 1 month later. So it would appear that our cells get progressively better at the cleanup process of autophagy the more this becomes a way of life. Studies also show after 4 weeks of daily fasting, 3 key autophagy genes were dramatically upregulated. So if you're new to this channel, you probably don't know yet what regulation is, upregulation, downregulation. Watch a couple of my other videos. And when you do, I talk quite a lot about downregulation. This is the first time I've mentioned upregulation. But what it actually means is that our body adapts to certain things. And in doing that, it will upregulate receptors when we need them. So it just means that it makes more receptors. So our body is upregulating that gene expression as we're adapting to fasting so that we get better, more profound effects of autophagy. They also found total body fat mass was down, like you would expect, and inflammation markers were down as well, and good cholesterol, which is your HDL cholesterol, actually increased. So they're all very good signs for health. But when people stopped fasting, well, the gene markers dropped, and they dropped very quickly, like within a week. Isn't that crazy? So I'm glad I've just naturally fasted all my life. It might explain why I've gotten away with doing so many things to my body and have never, thankfully, knock on wood, have never had terrible illness. Okay, so before we talk about what to eat, if you want more comprehensive information on how to get the very best weight loss results with a complete brain training program to stop self-sabotage and a complete nutrition program to reset your metabolism for lasting weight loss, check out this video next. And if you want to grab my free GLP-1 ebook, you can get it down below. I will put the link in the description for you. All right, let's move on. If you're on a GLP-1 and you're eating real, whole, fresh food, you are going to become fat adapted pretty quickly. So that means more fat burning, less hunger, more autophagy, and all the benefits that come with all of that. So when you add a GLP-1 on top of a fasting window, you're not going to feel like you're white knuckling your way through. Instead, you're just not eating yet because you're not hungry. That is the approach I would suggest that you take. So you don't have to jump in to an 18-hour fast. If that doesn't feel right for you, or if you have some of those symptoms that we spoke about earlier in the video, if you feel tired or weak or shaky or whatever, you can just let's say you have breakfast at 7 a.m. You could move it to 9 a.m. and see how you go. And then once you get used to that, move it to 10 and then 11 and so on until you get the window that you're looking for. So eating real fresh food means less hunger, and you'll naturally start fasting anyway if you are focused on eating when you're hungry, and you'll reap all those benefits. So how do you start adopting a fasting routine without feeling like it's torture? Well, I personally do intuitive eating, which is basically what I've just described, right? So for me, that could be 1 meal a day, depending on what my body is telling me, because I'm listening to what my body needs. Some days I might eat 2 really big, decent meals. At the moment, I am still on 1 milligram of Mounjaro combined with a very low carb or keto diet. So get comfortable with maybe a 16-8 fast, like 16 hours fasting and 8-hour eating window. 8 hours is plenty of time to have 2 or 3 meals, depending on how hungry you are. And you need to really get used to listening to your body instead of what the media is telling you, because there'll always be all this crap coming out on TV. Like I heard this thing a couple of years ago about how milk is more hydrating than water. I mean, come on. That was on the news too. And then when I delved into it, it turned out that the dairy industry funded that study. So, we need to forget about all the crap that we hear and just use common sense. And the most common sense thing is to listen to our body, listen to what it's telling us. And if it's telling us we're hungry, great, eat. Eat good quality food. And if you're not hungry, then you probably don't need to eat. It's pretty simple. So while you do that, you'll naturally become more adapted over time. Let your natural fasting window happen naturally rather than forcing it. And if you decide not to do a lower carb diet, it will make it slightly more difficult for you to fast for longer periods just because you're not becoming as fat adapted. However, you don't necessarily have to do low carb if you don't want to. So you might decide you'll do keto for half of your meals, or maybe you'll allow yourself carbs 1 meal out of the day and the rest of the day will be lower carb eating. It's entirely up to you and you can decide what works best for you. Just be sure to get enough electrolytes, protein, and fiber. They are the 3 biggest things. If you're eating real food 90% of the time, and you're eating intuitively, listening to what your body is telling you, you will get enough nutrients. Okay, so how do you structure your eating window? Protein at every meal. That's the first thing. So we're talking things like eggs, chicken, fish, full-fat Greek yogurt with no added sugar. Cottage cheese is a good option. Beef, lamb, all of these types of things. Every time you sit down to eat, protein should come first. And if you fill half of your plate with protein before you add anything else, you will be getting enough. So for a general rule of thumb is on a daily basis, aim for 2 palm sizes of good quality protein. So good quality would be eggs, meat, some type of animal protein, because animal proteins contain all of our amino acids and that is the building blocks to everything else in our body, right? So if you aim for 2 palm sizes a day, you will be getting sufficient amounts of protein. The next thing is low carb vegetables for volume and fiber. So these are things like leafy green veggies, broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, capsicum or bell pepper if you're in the US, cucumber. All of these things are fantastic to fill you up and give you lots and lots of nutrients. And they'll feed your good gut bacteria as well, which will help us lose weight. And I actually did a video on that, which I'll pop up here for you so you can watch that later if you like. And they have basically 0 insulin impact, which is exactly what we want if you are coming off a fast. If you're not a vegetable fan, hide them in your food. Make recipes which you can blend the veggies into without really noticing it. And you know what? If you start doing this, because I started doing this a million years ago, I was not a vegetable fan. Now I love vegetables, but only if I include them in certain ways. So you will notice after a little while that your taste buds will change and you'll actually crave them. The next thing to focus on is real whole food fats. So when I say whole food fats, I'm talking things like fatty fish, eggs, meat that naturally contains fat, avocado, nuts, and seeds. They're all whole food fats. And of course, full fat dairy products. And especially if you do decide to do a low carb approach, fat is actually necessary to keep you feeling full. There's no need to fear natural fats that come with real food. I personally don't add extra fat to my food unless it's really necessary in a recipe that I'm doing. I air fry most of my food these days. God, don't you love those things? But I do it without added fats. And when I say added fats, I'm talking about, like you'll see on TV when they're making, or on YouTube or whatever, when they're making a recipe and they're standing there pouring the olive oil into the pan. See, I don't do that. I would not use any extra oil if I don't have to. And that's just because I don't want to have to burn off those calories before my ketones and my body is burning up the fat from my thighs. So try to avoid processed carbohydrates as much as possible, and especially hidden sugars as much as possible, because those foods, especially with the GLP-1, because our gastric emptying is slower, they will actually make it very hard for you to be able to fast for longer periods. And you do get a prolonged sugar spike because our gut isn't moving as quickly on a GLP-1, which just means that our blood sugars are out of control for a bit longer if we're eating those types of foods. And it also, those foods, because of the insulin, they actually block fat burning, which is the opposite of what we want. So your eating window should be protein, fat, vegetables, keep it whole food, keep it really simple. All right, now just quickly, let's talk about warning signs that you should probably stop fasting. So let's say you've started fasting, it's been a little while, and now we're going to talk about what you need to speak to your doctor about potentially. If you notice any of these signs, so you're feeling dizzy or lightheaded regularly during your fasting window, that is a red flag, especially if you're also on blood pressure medications or any other medications apart from the GLP-1 that lower your blood sugar as well. If your energy is so low that you can't function, if you can't exercise, if you can't get through your normal day, that's not a fasting protocol that is working for you. If you feel yourself being grumpy and tired, it's probably time to stop fasting. You need a good feed. And you don't want to let your body get into such a massive deficit that you're not getting all of your micronutrients and your main macros. If you're experiencing significant nausea, vomiting, or reflux beyond normal GLP-1 side effects, fasting can exacerbate gastroparesis, which is something that needs urgent medical attention. So if you found this helpful, please remember to subscribe, because in my next video, we are taking a trip to the grocery store to do some simple swaps, and I'm going to show you where people get stalled by making little mistakes in the supermarket. I'm going to be showing you exactly which foods to buy and which ones to put straight back on the shelf, including some so-called healthy options that are quietly stalling your GLP-1 weight loss. So I will see you in that video next. All right, bye.
Smarter Nut Nutrition.